What's up, everybody? Welcome to another episode of the Red Room Podcast. Today, I am here with the fellow San Jose Rotarian, Steve Borkenhagen. How you doing, sir?
Very well. Blake, how are you?
I'm good. So, Steve, I want to kind of jump into it. San Jose, Silicon Valley, was this home? Is this where you grew up? Let's talk about where you kind of like started and how you ended up here.
I grew up in Silicon Valley before it was Silicon Valley. So my story is my dad fought in World War II, came to Santa Clara after World War II on the GI Bill, and he knew he wanted to go to a Jesuit school. So we have something in common.
Yeah, there we go.
And so his last choices were Creighton in Omaha and Santa Clara in beautiful California. And he passed that test and he chose to go to college in beautiful California. And my family never left. I was born in Santa Clara near the university and was really a Santa Clara Bronco family in the old days. But again, the valley was orchards in those days. There was no thought of silicon or technology.
Yeah. So what was that kind of like growing up, and what are your thoughts? Just kind of seeing it change over time. Because I recently came back from Los Angeles just a few years ago, and coming back, and I'm in Scotts Valley, and that town has just completely changed. It's like, oh yeah, that used to be like an RV parking lot, you know what I mean? And now it's like a hotel. So what are some of like those big, things you're like, whoa, they're putting one there?
It's hard for people who didn't grow up here to understand how rural Santa Clara Valley was in 1950, 1960.
Mm-hmm.
It was really all orchards, very few buildings, very low population. The population of Santa Clara in 1950, I think, was about 10,000, and now it's maybe 150,000 or 100,000. San Jose, I'm guessing in 1950 was 100,000 and is now 1 million, the 12th largest city in America. So probably this valley is one of the most changed places in the world in the last 70 years during my lifetime. So we went from this pastoral place with fruit orchards into what it is today with no orchards.
Yeah. I've had a couple other guests. Robert Berry was on. We were talking before the camera started rolling. Robert had family that owned an orchard, and then I had another another colleague that was just on a few weeks ago, and he had the same thing. He's like, yeah, family live at the orchard. So it's cool to kind of hear the starting points of that. So growing up, where'd you go to high school?
I went to Santa Clara High School, and then I went to Santa Clara University, and then I went to an experimental college, and then I went to West Valley College, then I went to San Jose State. So I had a really, really dynamic college experience. But going back to the early days for a moment, we were so free in those days. We in fact joke that we grew up in Mayberry, and I'm Opie. And I don't even know if those references mean anything to you.
Yeah.
You're a film guy, so you probably understand. But when we were 6, 8, 10 years old, would get on our bikes and disappear for 6 hours, 10 hours. As long as we got home before it got dark, no one cared. We would ride all across the valley, and it was mostly creeks and orchards. Again, it's really hard to imagine for people who moved here in the last, especially 10 or 20 years, to think that this was cherry trees everywhere. They used to say it snowed in the spring because all the cherry blossoms would blow in the wind, and especially in Sunnyvale and Cupertino, all those white blossoms would just be floating around in the air. It was very beautiful. But I think one might argue that our valley is the most transformed place in the world in the last 70 years, 100 years. I'm sure there are some other places like Dubai, but certainly in America, the population growth and the increase in wealth, et cetera, is staggering.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, very much so. No, I'd love to see, I wonder if they have, photos of the cherry blossoms and everything from back in the day.
You could find them for sure.
Yeah, that'd be cool. I'll see if I can put one up on the screen.
We would steal cherries and peaches and things from the trees.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, I just had my cousin on, and he's in the international fruit business, and so we were talking about exports and kind of cool rare fruits and everything like that, like pink lemons. I didn't know it was a thing, so it's pretty cool. So you went to high school, went to college, San Jose State. My grandfather Bob was a Spartan as well, and so was my mom actually too.
Your grandpa might have been a big donor to some buildings over there.
Yeah,
if I remember.
Yeah. He did that, and I think there's the was it the Brett Hosfeld is his son. There was a scholarship over there too. I'm forgetting the exact specifications of what it was for, but he was doing that over there too. But yeah, and then he was a part of the group called. He did some music too, and so he had an a cappella group with Ray Silva. Yeah, yeah, they called themselves the Spartoons, and they ended up going to like Carnegie Hall like back in the day. I remember this. I was like 13 at the time, and seeing Grandpa up on stage.
Ray Silva was one of our great characters.
Yeah, Ray was super cool. I loved Ray. He was one of those great
There's
guys.
a crazy story about 20 years ago. I think Ray's been dead for maybe 10 years, I'm
Mm,
guessing. But he was also president of our Rotary Club. It's maybe 20 years ago.
yeah.
But he was kind of a prude, and there was a San Jose State basketball game, and the girls, like the song girls, had these skimpy outfits on. And there was a big scene where he went out onto the basketball floor. And I think he wanted them to leave or change their clothes or something. And it was this sort of clash of generations.
Yeah,
And it was a great moment of chaos.
that's so funny. That's so funny. So you mentioned, so you were president of Rotary, and so you were actually the first San Jose Rotarian who was president that is on the podcast. So that's cool.
Yahoo!
That's awesome. Okay, so let's what do you have to do as president for someone? Because again, I've been there for about like a year or so. Just got my blue badge in this last October. So what? Like, first of all, how are you like nominated? How does that whole like process work? Can you like run me through it all?
No, if I told you, we'd have to kill you. So, yeah, the process is just to volunteer. You know, the spirit of Rotary is it's really helping the people of the world. That's what Rotary is.
Yeah.
A lot of people think about funny hats or handshakes, but we're just a bunch of people who want to do good things. It's really that simple.
Mm-hmm.
But in order to be president, you have to have been the chairman of a committee.
Mm.
You have to have been on the board. The board is about maybe 12 people. So you have to have served on the board, been chair of a committee. That might be about it. And then you're thrown into the pool of qualified candidates. And then every year the leadership goes through all the people who qualify. And then we go invite someone to be president. And most people say yes.
So what are like what jobs? What does it
What are the
all?
responsibilities?
Just yeah. What does it all entail?
The primary job is running the weekly meetings, as you know. You've
Yeah.
been in the club for a year or so
Yeah.
now. And so our club is the 8th biggest in the world or something like that. So
Mhm.
one of the largest in the world. So we have 400 and something members. So at our meetings, we get 100 to 200 people depending on the program. So just being the MC and running the meeting is the primary responsibility. But in addition to that, you end up running the club for that year, which would be interfacing with our committees. We have more committees in our big club than most than most clubs have members. We have about 50 committees. So you visit the committees, try to help everyone who asks for help, and a lot of people ask for help. As I was saying to you earlier, really the unwritten rule of Rotary is when people ask you, you say yes.
Mm.
So you're asked to help people a lot, and you say yes, and try to make our community better, make the world a better place. Get to go to some wonderful national, international meetings of other presidents, etc. There's an
Huh.
international conference that thousands of people attend from Rotary clubs all around the world. There are about 1 million people in Rotary in the world, approximately. So those are the primary responsibilities.
What is that like doing all the international stuff? That sounds like really cool. So did they just get to have like is it like an annual like get together, and then are they like in different parts of the world? And then like what are some of the cool places that you've gone to?
I was president the year right after COVID. So during COVID, we had 2 presidents, one who had most of her year on Zoom, and then my predecessor, Fernando Zazueta,
Mm-hmm.
never did a live meeting. He did a whole year on Zoom. So I made the decision when I was president-elect that when I became president, we would go back to meeting in person. So it took a while to build the meetings again. The first ones, we might have only had 40 or 50 people or something like that.
Yeah.
There was still a lot of fear of COVID, a lot of people who didn't want to be in contact with anybody,
Mhm.
but we wore masks, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
But there's a conference, there's an international Rotary conference that moves around the world, all the great cities of the world. So when one is president, you might get lucky and your meeting is in Paris, and you might get unlucky and it's in Indianapolis.
Yeah.
I actually didn't go to that conference because of COVID.
Hmm.
And then there's also a large club conference in America for the clubs that have paid staff, and I think it's about 100 clubs in America, mostly the big cities. And that was really great because most of us assume that our club does all the best stuff, and it was very impressive to see what other clubs from around the country do. And then there are other international conferences. I didn't get to go to any because of COVID, but normally presidents would probably get to go to two of those meetings that are in really interesting places.
And then while you're there, what are like some of the things that like you see other clubs doing that you're like, oh, hey, I think that would actually be really cool for like our club to do, or vice versa? What have they taken from us?
I can't remember the specific ideas that I stole from other clubs when I was president, but what I'll say is they were thoughtful people in these conferences, in breakouts, in big plenary uh, meetings, and lots of people, lots of smart, well-intentioned people trying to help one another. Um, Again, which is what Rotary is. There's not a lot of complexity to Rotary. It's quite
Yeah,
simple.
yeah,
If
yeah.
you want to do something good, you go to the president and the board say, I want to start a committee to do such and such. And unless it's somehow uh, evil or is going to not make the world a better place,
Yeah.
the answer is yes. And then you go recruit people and you start a new committee. So that's what we do. And I wish I could remember more about those conferences that I went to, but I can't remember now, except to say that I was so impressed with the people.
Yeah, yeah. It's my soon to be brother-in-law is the current president of the Malibu Rotary, but because of like all the fires and everything down there, it's been kind of hard to like get people to like get back together. So it's kind of like been dwindling a bit. So he's trying to get that, going again. Do you have any like
That's another example of the work that we do. In the case of natural disasters, clubs around the world will raise money and try to support places that have had disasters. There was one in particular that we raised a lot of money for, but I can't remember what it was right now. Um, but something like that Malibu fire, I'm guessing that there's Rotarians around the world either sending money or sending help. When I was president was when Russia invaded Ukraine, and in one meeting, I was very moved by the whole thing to do something. And my friends and others stood up, and we raised about I think $25,000 in about 5 minutes
wow,
for Ukraine.
that's
And I
amazing.
think, and typically the conduit for the money is often a nearby Rotary Club. So
Yeah.
I think we might have given the money to the Rotary Club of Warsaw, Poland, for them in turn to help Ukraine, which is right next door. But it's just again an example when you have a fire or something like that Rotary offers this network of support around the world.
That's really cool that you guys are able to like raise that much in like
It's
such
not
a
you
short
guys,
amount
it's
of
us.
time. Yeah, well, yeah, it's us.
You're one
Us.
of us.
Us. Well, you guys meaning back with before I joined, but yes, us.
Just never mind.
Yes. Get totally. Get.
One more Rotary comment.
Yeah.
That I've been in the club for 33 years, so basically your whole life.
Yeah.
And one of the greatest things that I've done is an organization called Rotoplast, which started out as a inside of Rotary committee, and then it became a third party independent nonprofit. Still supported mostly, I think, by Rotary, but we go on trips with a contingent of about 30 people, 15 or 20 are medical, 10 or so are non-medical. I'm non-medical. We have surgeons, plastic surgeons, anesthesiologists, nurses, pediatricians,
Wow.
physical therapists, and we go to third world countries for about 10 or 14 days and do hundreds of surgeries on children, mostly with cleft palate and cleft lip. But I've been on 2 trips to Guatemala, and our club is sending a group to Colombia in July, I think, of this year. But it's just an example of the profound work that we do. It's not all just balloons and blowing on horns. It's wonderful work. So regardless of what kind of work you're interested in, Rotary is a great vehicle just to meet like-minded people and go do good work. And the Rotoplast is sort of like Doctors Without Borders of, again, medical people going to places where people can't afford medical care and giving it to them all for free, so that the patients pay nothing.
Wow.
And those trips cost about $100,000 each to put on.
What's the
And even the medical people don't get paid. Again, it's all volunteers.
wow? What's the like? How many like when you go to like one of these countries that to help fix the cleft palate? Like how long? I'm ignorant on it, but like how long does it take to like for like the surgery in general to like?
Not very long. Cleft lips and cleft lips are easier than the palates. But I'm going to say that a cleft lip is an hour or something like that, and a palate might be a few hours. Don't quote me on that,
Yeah.
studio audience, not
Yeah.
non-studio audience at home. But in
Like how many people do you have like coming through while you're down there doing that?
I think the most surgeries that I've heard of is in the range of 150,
Wow.
and the smallest maybe is around 100 or less. And I want to say that there are 5 days surgeries, so that would only be about 20 or 30 per day. We typically have 3 surgeons, so maybe each surgeon can do 6 a day or something like that. So that I think it's close to what I was saying about the amount of time that it takes. One interesting thing about mouth surgery that we found is that when you can actually go into the OR because the mouth is not a sanitary is not the word I was looking for. Sterile. The mouth is not a sterile environment.
Hmm.
The surgeons will let you go right up and watch them do surgery, which is really
Wow.
cool. And so I got to watch a little bit of surgery from right up close, again, because it's not sterile.
Yeah.
And so seeing how sharp these scalpels are and the way that surgeons that work, it's a thing of beauty. They're really impressive professionals doing what they do.
Yeah. No, that's I think that's just one of the reasons why I wanted to join this is just, doing good like that. And I think that's like really neat to be a part of, you know?
And just one other one. I don't want us to get hung up too
No,
much
no,
on
you're
Rotary,
no.
even though Rotary is an really important
Yeah.
part of my life.
Yeah.
But we had an incoming program that our club invented and developed. And a guy named Gary Silver, who was a cardiologist, who was also a member, who just died in the last year, actually.
Mm.
He founded this, and it was called Adult Gift of Life. And we would bring in a single patient from a third world country, and give them heart surgery here. Again, zero cost. We'd fly them in. They'd stay in the hospital. They'd stay somewhere after their hospital stay. All the surgeons did the work for free. The hospital, O'Connor donated all the ERs and everything else. And again, a dumb guess is that it might have been maybe $100,000 worth of in-kind donation to those patients, and they'd come very sick and go home healthy. This would be a wonderful thing.
Wow.
I was on that committee for 10 years or something like that.
Just what's that like to be able to touch a person's life like that and like have it change for the better? I mean, what's that like?
I think by asking the question, it's very very heavy and very beautiful, and it's wonderful even as lay people to be part of something bigger like that. And people like me who aren't medical personnel would do things like drive people around,
Mhm.
support them in other ways. Kind of a funny story. One of the adult gift of life guys was from Dominican Republic.
Mm.
His name was Felix. I actually remember his first name.
Mm.
But he had his surgery, and then post-op, he was doing fine. And so knowing he was from Dominican Republic, I asked him if he was into, excuse me,
There it is.
what would you guess?
Uh,
Dominican Republic, baseball.
yeah.
So he was here in the summer. So I said, do you like baseball? Well, Dominicans are known for being great baseball players. There's a disproportionate number of great Dominican baseball players.
Yeah.
And so he said, oh, of course. And so I took him to a Giants game. And I think the seats were donated by my friend Scott McQueen, who you might know. He's a member of our Rotary Club. But we went to the game. And so halfway through the game, I asked him if he wanted something to eat, and he said, yeah, and he wanted a hot dog or something. So I went to go get food. But the point of the story is while I was gone, so here's a guy who's just had heart surgery.
Yeah.
So he's not going to be jumping around. And while he's sitting there, a foul ball comes, and it lands about 5 feet from him. And as you know, if you're a baseball guy, when there's a foul ball, everyone scrambles for the ball.
Yeah.
Of course, and goes and tries to get it. Well,
Yeah.
he had the discipline to just sit there and not ruin his heart.
Yeah.
And so the next guy ended up getting the ball, but he would have probably, if I had been there at my seat, I would have caught the ball and then given it to him. So it was just a funny story about baseball and Dominicans and adult gift of life.
Yeah.
He was a really sweet guy. He was a cab driver, but very, very charming.
That's cool. I love stories like that. That's awesome. So, Steve, let's talk about your life and work. And so after college, and where did you kind of go? What field did you want to go in?
When I was a boy, I always thought that I would be a history professor of some kind. And when I went to San Jose State, I ended up studying Latin and Greek. So I was a classics major in college, but I never finished college. I got married very young while I was still a student at San Jose State. And partners and we were all fellow students at San Jose State, opened up a movie theater called Camera One in downtown San Jose in 1975. We were just children, really. We were college kids. And we were all film buffs, and we used to go to Berkeley and Palo Alto a lot to go to see foreign films at the University of Palo Alto. And forget the name of the theater in Berkeley. But we opened up, and we did well. But then I shortly thereafter had my first kid, and we had this movie theater that was doing well. And then we opened a restaurant right next door to the movie theater. These are on South First Street downtown, across from the California Theater. It used to be the Fox Theater in the old days. In the really old days, it was the California Theater. It became the Fox. Then it went back to being the California Theater. So we opened a restaurant, and once we did that, it sucked us in the way restaurants do. And so I was in the restaurant and jazz club business from 1977, really until just a few years ago, when COVID ended up finally killing Cafe Stritch, which was in the same space. And I was not the owner for about 10 years. My oldest son, Mike, owned Cafe Stritch, and my youngest son, who's about your age, Maxwell, he did all the music, he did the sound, he booked all the music. He was sort of the artistic director of that. So most of my life was spent owning restaurants. I actually had another restaurant called Blake's.
Hey!
You're probably thinking I'm making this up, but I'm not. It's called Blake's Steakhouse on San Pedro. And then we also owned Valeriano's, which was on Main Street right near Santa Cruz Avenue. It was an Italian place. We had that for about 10 years. The point of that is for about 40 years or so, we owned and operated first a movie theater and then a bunch of restaurants and bars and jazz clubs.
So we'll dive into the restaurant stuff, because I was in the restaurant business for a little bit too. But curious, so the movie theater business, how do you start that? Where do you go? I mean, how do you approach the people and say, all right, we would like to showcase your film here. How do you go about doing that? What are the starting steps? So if someone's watching this, it's like, I want to do that. What do you do?
First, you don't open a movie theater. You go to somebody else. You become a real estate agent. But one of our partners had knowledge inside of the film biz more than the rest of us, and the building we went into was already a movie theater. I think it was actually a porn theater before we were there. That in those days, before 1975, from about 1960 to 1975, downtown San Jose was at its low point. A lot of the buildings had been demolished. It really was the whole downtown was a disaster. We were sort of part of this group of young guys who were trying to improve the downtown. But Camera One was a movie theater, so we had projectors. They were old carbon arc projectors. Do you know what that is?
No.
So there used to be two projectors. If you watch old films, you'll see a little dot, and then there'll be a segue that happens.
Mm-hmm.
The dot was telling the projectionist, I think it was 5 seconds or 10 seconds after that dot, where the projectionist would switch from one of the projectors to the other projector. Now, why did they have to have two projectors? Because this was celluloid film. This was not digital. So this is pre-digital. Now it's all digital. And so these giant discs that have the celluloid film on them could only have about 20 minutes or so of film on that one reel. So you'd have reel one, you'd have all the odd numbers on one of the projectors and the evens on the other one. And so a few seconds before you need to switch, they would, at one time it was manual, but I think they would press a button and the aperture through which the projector was projecting would close and the other one would open and it would go from projector 1 to projector 2. And then it would go back to projector 1 and then it would go to projector 2. And if you look this up, anybody who's of a certain age, like my age, will remember this because sometimes you'd have problems with it where there'd be a technical problem and sometimes actually the film would rip and tear and everything would stop for while the projections had to fix that. But where the light came from was these very, very bright lights called carbon arcs. So these were two carbon rods with an arc running between them that created really, really bright light. And that light was bright enough with a reflector to go through the celluloid film and then create the image on the screen. So that's how those projectors worked in those days. So we had a theater, and this Jack Nyblom, who was one of the partners who did the actual booking, the studios would have these booking agents, and you would simply say, I want to show this film on these days and this film on these days. We would go to San Francisco in our little truck that we had, our little Ford truck, and we would pick up these containers that were extremely heavy with these reels that were about this big, and each of these containers that were made out of steel or aluminum would hold about maybe 6 of those reels and weighed probably 50 pounds, 70 pounds, something like that. And so we would drive to San Francisco once a week or so and pick up all of these film reels, bring them down to the theater, use them, and then go back up again, drop those off and pick up new ones. If we had been more successful, I'm sure there was a service to deliver them, but we were bootstrapping children. So we did everything ourselves. But then later on, the technology changed to these big platters, and I don't know much about them today, but these platters were maybe 3 or 4 feet in diameter. So this one, it was still film, but one big platter would mean that you could have a single projector instead of switching back and forth from 1 to 2, 1 to 2, 1 to 2. And then I believe today that they're all digital, maybe unless you go to some retro sort of historic theaters like the Stanford or the California or something like that. So the movie theater part, I was only a part only there for a few years, and then we switched completely into the restaurant part. But a group of us, were sort of the vanguard of downtown San Jose's resurgence back in the 70s. That's really still going on today. It's in our generation, sort of in your lifetime, a little more than your lifetime. Downtown's gone through a radical transformation. Still has a long way to go.
Yeah. So, restaurant business. So, what kind of food, when you jumped into that business, what kind of restaurant did you want?
We started out doing sandwiches and really simple food, soups, sandwiches, salads. Then we became a crepe cafe for a while. Then we became a white tablecloth restaurant in about 1980. And so we were white tablecloth from 80 until 2012, something like that. And then Cafe Stritch, which is a jazz club, was in that same space in the 2010s. So we were mostly a white tablecloth, what we called California cuisine, New American cuisine in those days. And we were the San Jose's first one, so we were pretty successful for a while. And then, like most restaurants, slowly drip, fall into oblivion. That's the story of most restaurants, not all.
Were you were you ever helping out in the kitchen, do anything like that? Were you just kind of managing the whole? I mean, obviously the whole thing, but
in the early years, the partners, did everything. We cleaned the toilets. We cooked. We did everything. I used to always say, but we would wash our hands between the toilets in the kitchen.
That's good.
We cooked in the beginning. So in the early days, during the crepe phase, and when we had burgers and sandwiches, we made the food, including me. I am not a chef. I never really worked in the kitchen once we became white tablecloth. So my job was to run the restaurant, and I was the guy at the front who would hand you the menu and take you to your table. So I was a host in a restaurant.
There you go. And then what was in the early 2010s? What was the drive, or what led you into wanting to turn it into like a jazz club? Because that's cool. Because I'm a musician. I love jazz. I grew up singing Sinatra. I actually play alto saxophone still too. So
I'm disappointed we never got you to come in then. But that being said, our restaurant had kind of run out of gas, and I had run out of gas for the business, and
Mhm.
I was ready to move on to something new. And my sons were interested in doing something exciting and fun and new and really needed in the community. There aren't a lot of jazz clubs in America, largely because it's very difficult to make money
Mm.
in the jazz club business. But Cafe Stritch for almost 10 years did very well. The boys made a living, and we really created some magic music. We did an annual thing called a Rossana-thon. Rossan Roland Kirk is a famous saxophonist. He died in 77. The same year we opened Eulippia, and Eulippia was named after a song created by this guy, Rossan Roland Kirk. And he played a straight, uh, you said you played tenor or alto?
Alto.
Yeah, a straight alto is called a stritch. And it's a kind of an oddball instrument, and it's pretty long. It's about 4 feet long.
Interesting.
So Cafe Stritch was named after this long alto. And we actually had the alto sax that was owned by this guy, Rossan Roland Kirk, back when he was alive.
Wow.
And so we actually rehabilitated it, and it was played by one of the preeminent sax players in the world now, is James Carter. I don't know if you know James, but spectacular player. But we did
I'll
this
check them
festival.
out.
We did this. I'll send you some stuff. But
Yeah.
we did this festival every year where they played this all-star group played the music of Rossan Roland Kirk. And if you ask the people who attended, a lot of them will say it was sort of a transformative moment in their lives of these guys playing this really magical music. Steve Toure, who's a top-notch trombone player, was the leader of the band, and the other guys were Matt Clark is a Bay Area pianist who's top-notch. Charles McNeil was the alto player. James Carter played tenor and stritch and flute, and Daryl Green was the drummer, and Marcus Shelby the bass player. But these guys are all some really top players, and they just created a lot of magic. So for me, I was just father of owner instead of being owner. That was a much better thing to be.
Yeah.
But I tried to help them. They'd probably tell you I just got in the way and screwed things up. I'm not sure.
So what was like were you doing like bands like on Fridays or like every day of the week, or is it like during the weekends? What were like your best nights?
We were open, I think, Tuesday or Wednesday through Sunday.
Mhm.
Sunday night was a jam that we'd have a musician run the jam. Fridays and Saturdays clearly the big nights. Thursday okay, Tuesdays, Wednesdays slow. Might have even been open Mondays for a while, but Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday are difficult. Weekends are when you really cook.
So did you ever? I know you mentioned those names, but did you ever have like any like other like famous like musicians just like randomly show up and be like, hey, I'd love to play, like anything like that?
Not so much randomly show up, but
But inquire.
we booked top jazz talent from around the world. Richie Cole was a great player from sort of my age. I'm trying to think of some of the other really great ones. Louis Hayes, the drummer, Jeremy Pelt. A lot of the New York guys came through and would play and were just spectacular. Delfeo Marsalis is really great. He's another trombone player, part of the Marsalis clan with Marsalis and Branford and those guys. So we had top players. It was as good as it gets. The place was very funky, so it had a vibe that the jazz audience really liked. There was no pretense in the place. It was really basic and all about the music.
That's
really good.
That's really cool.
Yeah.
I have.
I'll show you a film sometime.
Yeah, no, I'd absolutely love to check it out. So when I was down in LA, I befriended some of the folks from the Beach Boys, and I got to go into United Recording and East West Studios, and got to like go into like Studio 3, where like Brian Wilson and did Pet Sounds, and Mike, I got Mike, and then like Mamas and the Papas did California Dreaming, and pretty cool like walking into these places and like seeing all of that stuff. It's like, oh yeah, like here's the mic that Sinatra recorded on. You're like, oh, no big deal. But yeah, love music. It's fun growing up with like mom and and Bob too. I mean, Bob would, like we were talking like the Spartoons and everything, and yeah, mom was she still teaches over the hill, and um, she's always kind of getting her kids, trying to push them and staying into the classics and stuff like that. So I keep telling her, I'm
Classic
like,
jazz, classical music.
yeah, classic, classical jazz, and like kind of doing like some really good tunes, and it's fun for me because like I feel like, and no disrespect to the new artists, but I feel like music today isn't like the same as it was back then, where it's like you actually like I feel like really had like a heart, and a soul to like playing this stuff, and like now it's like again, you could literally create a track on your computer, and I mean that's still I'm not disregarding that, but it's like I feel like there's something elegant and powerful about seeing someone actually like play live. I
Well,
think
jazz is definitely a medium that is best alive. There's no doubt about it. It's a live medium, and I was lucky. My dad was a professional trumpet player. He played New Orleans style trumpet, and so he played the Preservation Hall style, which isn't exactly my sweet spot, even though I love that music. But most of the stuff I love is actually from the 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, the Coltrane period, Miles Davis, and that kind
yeah,
of thing. But the modern players are fantastic, and there's armies of them
yeah,
that are incredible. But what I would say is that the variety of jazz or the variety of music in general today is far greater than it was back 50 or 100 years ago. And modern music has become much more wide open, experimental,
hmm
fearless, I would say
yeah.
too. But a lot of it's not my thing, but some of it is definitely my thing. But your point about the live nature is it's critical. So a live jazz clubs produce magic that you might not ever get in your whole life.
Have you heard of a gentleman by the name of Jacob Collier?
No,
I'll send you this guy.
thank you.
He's this he's I think he's 28, maybe 25. He's a young guy, and he's literally a music prodigy. I've It's kind of
What
like
does he play?
he produces and plays everything, and he gets audience participation involved, and he knows he does it's insane. He blew up on YouTube because he does all these crazy, really good harmonies, and he did a cover of "When You Meet the Flintstones." Yeah, that he did, and he was doing all these really crazy. I'll have to send it to you. I'm not doing it justice, but he will do these big, concerts, and he'll have the audience participating, and he'll break them up into sections and be doing all these different harmonies as he's like playing and doing all this different stuff, and it's one of those like again like referencing like the Beach Boys kind of thing. It's like Brian was one of those guys, you know what I mean? And I feel like Jacob's kind of that too. So I'll have to send that to you.
Musical geniuses are incredible.
Yeah.
And you talk about like playing all the instruments, etc., and you take people like Paul McCartney or Sammy Davis junior and these are guys who could play lots of instruments and do the whole thing. It's impressive. Most of us can't play one.
Yeah. What are some of your favorite concerts or bands that you've like loved to seen or like grew up with or like watching and stuff? You mentioned Paul. What are
I
some?
was I always enjoyed jazz, but like almost every kid of my generation growing up in the late 60s and 70s, the usual suspects were my people. I was actually never into metal or big hair or any of that stuff,
Mm-hmm.
even though I actually had big hair for a while, which is ironic looking at my bald head. But Joni Mitchell, James Taylor, Leonard Cohen, Jackson Brown, Crosby, Stills, Nash.
Yeah.
Those were my people
Yeah.
from that time. And I like the Beach Boys and the Beatles,
Yeah.
all of them also. But I would say that folk, Carole King kind of stuff
Mm-hmm.
that was my thing. And then more and more jazz as I got older. I still love the folk stuff, but mostly now I listen to classical and what you talked about classical jazz earlier,
Yeah.
if you wanted to use that phrase, but again, it would be from Duke Ellington to Coltrane and the guys of the 70s that I loved.
Do you
Still love.
do you still have your dad's trumpet?
I don't have my dad's trumpet, but I'm guessing my sister does because she was sort of the keeper of the dad's stuff.
Yeah. Yeah. Did he ever kind of like, hey, try playing?
I actually played trumpet for a couple weeks, and my cheeks hurt so much I gave up when I was about 10.
It's tough.
Yeah,
It's tough. I did the same thing. That's why I went over to saxophone because it was way easier.
Trumpet is really hard for me. But the trumpet, it's funny you asked about the trumpet. It reminds me of a funny story about me that when my dad died, we did a New Orleans style funeral for him. Do you know anything
No.
about New Orleans style funeral?
School me on it. What do you do?
So the bands march. Excuse me. The bands march, and in New Orleans they'll march down the street. They have special hats, and there are these marching bands,
Mhm.
and they play dirges and they play other kinds of music that's appropriate for funerals. It's not all downbeat. Some of it is up tempo stuff.
Yeah.
But so they walk in and they sit inside the church, and then they play some more. And during the service, you'll have them play tunes. But right before the funeral, and I was going to do the eulogy, and excuse me, I came up with this idea. I thought it was the greatest idea, and the idea was I was going to take the trumpet, and then where the band sat, and one of the seats in the front, symbolically, I put the trumpet on the seat, but my dad was dead, and I thought, what a brilliant idea. I thought I was so proud of myself. And then afterwards, I think someone said, "I'm glad you did the missing musician thing with the trumpet." And I said, well, "What are you talking about?" He said, "Oh, we put the musical instrument of the guy who's dead on an empty chair." And I realized, oh, so everybody's been doing that for 100 years. But I came up with it myself. I didn't know about it, so it just was a funny moment of thinking that I had this original idea when it wasn't original at all.
I've had those moments too where it's like, hey, no one's ever done. Yes, they have done that before. Like, dang it, what about that? Nope, that one's been done before too.
Well, my dad's funeral was a really beautiful thing, largely because of the music. Just one other personal moment I had. I was going to do the eulogy when the time came. I couldn't produce any sound out of my vocal cords. I couldn't make sound.
Yeah.
And so I had to hand the eulogy that I had written to my friend who went up and read it, because I really wanted to deliver it, because it was maybe the best thing I've ever read about my dad. And so it just was a funny moment of literally not being able to make sound.
Yeah. It's my grandfather. So Bob, there's a moment when he was like younger, and he was at San Jose State, and he was like in some music class, and he forgot the lyric. He was doing some performance, and I forget the name of the song, but it starts off with like "How deep is the ocean," and he forgot all the lyrics to except that part. So we just kept saying those
Over and
lyrics over and over again, and just going with the tune of the song. And the guy's like, pull him off to like after that. He's like, "Hey Bob," he's like, I don't think music's for you. He's like, "I'll give you a C, and just go do something else."
Well, theater and music, when it's live, and
Yeah.
you go with what you got.
Yeah, that's it. Let's ask some fun questions. So, 49ers or Raiders for football when the Raiders were here? Who's your team? Or is it not any of those guys? And someone else?
Definitely 49ers.
49ers?
To me, it feels like the Raiders arrived about 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
Still.
Yeah. What are your thoughts of the Niners going to Santa Clara and like demolishing Candlestick and everything like that? What were your thoughts about like that battle?
I'm not a real fan anymore, so I frankly didn't really care.
Yeah, they just kind of petered.
I lost interest when they traded Joe Montana just to show my life. So
Yeah,
30 years ago,
Yeah.
I really stopped following the 49ers. Although when they play in the Super Bowl, I go to my friend's house and I watch. But I wouldn't describe myself as a football fan. But in sports,
Mhm.
I've really been into the Warriors during this phase, during the Curry phase. And when I was a boy, I was really into the Warriors too. I played basketball in high school, so I love
Okay.
basketball.
What position did you play?
I was only 6 feet at the most, so I was definitely a guard.
Yeah. I played for a little bit, but for the life of me, I just could not. My shots were just dog water. I couldn't hit it. It would just hit the rim and bounce off. I was not great.
I was never a shooter either. So if you can't shoot, you do other things.
Yeah, you do other things.
My thing was defensive passing.
Yeah.
You learn your place.
Yeah. I was all right at layups. I was all right at layups. And I could get it there. My left, I had to practice a little bit more on, but I was like, yeah, I could not for free throws or anything like that. I would just like pass that off to someone
I
else.
had a lucky experience, sort of a backdoor experience when I was a boy. I had 2 operations on my right arm. And I think I had both of them during basketball season. So I spent a season with my right arm in a cast. I'm right-handed. But as a boy, you're still going to go out and play. I couldn't play on the team, but I'd go play with my friends. And so twice for a few months, I had to play with one hand only. And then I became left-hand dominant. So what you were just saying about dribbling was interesting, that I actually became much better dribbling with my left hand than my right, because my right arm was taken out of commission a couple times. Isn't that funny?
I have kind of like that same thing. So before I went to Scotts Valley High, I was going to Robert Louis Stevenson High School down in Pebble Beach for just like a semester. And I was the starting quarterback for the freshman team. And I was warming up my arm one day, and this guy was like, "Hey, Blake," and I turned around and he hucked a bullet at my face. And by the time I turned around, I didn't have my helmet on. I went up to block it and it shattered my knuckle. You can see it's kind of a little funky or whatever.
See it?
So I had to get like pins, and I did a whole surgery. I had the guy that does all of like the giants, like, in the A's and everything do it. Like, that's a healthy finger, and like that's as close as I could, get to it. So I can't like make like a perfect fist or whatever. But it was to that point where I had a cast up to my elbow, and I had to walk around like this, because if I dropped it, all the blood would rush and would just like hurt like an SOB, you know what I mean? And so, like, of course, during this time, I was in the middle of taking finals, and at RLS, they're like, yeah, all of our finals are handwritten. I'm like, dude, I can't write. So I had to teach myself how to be left-handed, and surprisingly, my cursive was better with my left arm. And I'm like, what have I been doing all these years? It was like, I was impressed with myself. I was like, I didn't know I could do that. So I can relate to all of that.
It's funny, this conversation is kind of random.
Yeah.
But really the most important part of my life is my family. And I have 4 kids, and my youngest is about your age, and then I have 3 older ones. But to talk honestly about my life story, my 4 kids are core to really my whole life for the past 50 years.
That's amazing. You gotta I'm all about family, and it's growing up, my grandparents were just a couple, 10, 15 minutes away from me. So I was like very fortunate to kind of have like a second pair of like, parents almost. So it's to that point, like I'm a big family guy. So that's cool that they were involved, with you, and, doing all of your ventures and everything like that. That's fun. So what are they up to now? You kind of mentioned it.
So my oldest son, Michael, I mentioned he was the owner of Cafe Stritch. He is now doing wine bottle etching in Scotts Valley, near your home. My second son is a college professor in Florida. His name's Matthew. He's got 3 kids. And my daughter has a little 2-year-old. Her name's Melissa, and her husband Nick, and they have a little Nico baby. And my son Maxwell is the artist kind of in the family, although Matt's a very good guitarist. But Max lives in the city and works at jazz clubs. He does work similar to what he did at Cafe Stritch, and so they're all doing very well. I'm really proud of all of them.
How's being grandpa? Is that fun?
It's great. It's been kind of a drag, because my son Matt, who's got the 3 kids, was living in Madison, Wisconsin for the last almost 10 years, and now he's in Florida, so I don't get to see them as often as I'd like.
Yeah.
But my little Nico's around here, so I get to see him. Being grandpa's really fun.
That's cool. That's cool. Yeah, I just I used to do like with Bob. It was kind of fun when we were and actually kind of helped me out for Mother's Day. We used to do the hand paint, things like on the sweatshirts and stuff like that. We did that, and it was kind of funny. I saw TikTok or whatever. There was this trend where these couples were doing these they put paint on their arms, and they would like hug their their significant other, and I was like, I'm gonna do that for Mother's Day. So I did a nice little surprise for mom. So we got like shirts with like the paint on the for the hug on the back.
Cute.
It's cool. She was like, oh. So,
I was visualizing the thing with the turkeys. Remember that that you would draw?
yeah, the turkeys. That's totally it. That's totally it. What are some for people that haven't been to like Silicon Valley before? What are some fun activities that you recommend for people to like go off and do?
Let me come back to that question
Sure.
in a moment. So I really left out the last 8 years or 10 years of my life. And I, along with my friend John Ball, we started a nonprofit called San Jose Light Tower Corporation. And we've been working now for 8 years with a whole bunch of friends. We've got over 500 donors, most of whom are our Rotary friends. And I'm eternally grateful to them. We've been trying to build an iconic landmark for San Jose. The reason I'm bringing this up is that when you talk about coming to San Jose in the South Bay, there aren't that many interesting things to do. And what's driven our group largely is the idea that we should have some kind of physical landmark. When you watch your 49ers on television, during timeouts, they show pictures of the Golden Gate Bridge, and they don't show pictures of our own community. And that's partly because we don't have an iconic structure, a Space Needle,
Yeah.
a St. Louis Arch, whatever it might be. So we've been working on that for 8 years. And we're in a transition now. Probably by the end of this year, I won't be doing it anymore. We're hoping that another organization will be empowered by the city of San Jose to be a Conservancy Plaza de Cesar Chavez, which is where we're hoping our project will get built. So we're still working on design details and a vision for the park. But the point of it is about something that's spectacular, where when people come here, everyone will go there. And so you asked the question about, where do you take people when they come? And I think the sad answer is there aren't a lot of places I would go. The places I would go to is Happy Hollow and the Santa Clara University for sure. I think Santa Clara is one of the really beautiful places we have. Stanford. Sometimes have a picnic at San Jose State. So the colleges tend to be the more interesting places. We've got San Jose Museum of Art, very nice. If they have kids, the Children's Discovery Museum's really nice. But an irony is that a lot of times I think when we have visitors here, you probably do the same as I do. I'll take them to Santa Cruz and Half Moon Bay and to the San Francisco and maybe to Oakland. And if it's a multiple day thing, go to Yosemite. And Santa Cruz is always really high on my list too. So I would say that our South Bay is not a very tourist-centric place now, but I expect in your lifetime certainly that it will become more so. But we're hoping to build something spectacular. So that's what I've been working on for almost the last 10 years.
So what when you go to start that, when you all sit down, what structure do you like, or like what do you think of? I mean, like to like really like, this is San Jose, this is Silicon Valley. How do you start these conversations on like what to put there? Because that's a huge thing. Everyone's going to see it.
To condense 8 years into a minute or two, first we did a site study to figure out where it should be, because we wanted it to be on public property in a park. So we did that with the city. We selected Arena Green next to where the Sharks play. After a couple of years, we decided that wasn't the best place. So we moved to Plaza de Cesar Chavez. We've been working on that now for a couple of years. We're in the process of tweaking our design right now and also trying to come up with a design for the entire park. So rather than just designing an object, the idea of a inspirational and very beautiful design for the whole park. So that's what we're working on as we speak. So number one was the site. Number two would be the design. So we held the Worldwide Ideas competition and had a winning design, but we're in a changing phase of that right now. So as someone who's started a lot of things, it begins with two guys with a cocktail or a beer, and one of them says, what we should do is such and such, sort of like you do with your projects, and then you just dive in and start doing it, and you always ride that roller coaster of success and failure, and sometimes you're on the right track, and sometimes you're on the wrong track, but all you can do is keep course correcting, and that's what we try to do.
Yeah, I'm rooting for you guys. That's really That's really cool because yeah, then I think about it, it's like, yeah, you're right about, when the 49ers are playing to that point, it's like, yeah, they are showing the Golden Gate Bridge and all this stuff. So what is Silicon Valley? What is San Jose?
One of the ironies is that we are arguably the most successful business environment in the history of the world,
Hmm.
greater Silicon Valley. And really most of the heavyweights in the last few years, a lot of companies have gone to the city, but really going back to the early days in the 70s, starting with Stanford Business Park and Xerox and Terman and all that stuff. The focus has really been Santa Clara, Sunnyvale, Mountain View, Palo Alto,
Hmm.
little bit maybe slightly north of that. None of those companies are outward facing.
Hmm.
I'm sure you've experienced this. Somebody says, well, take me to Apple, take me to Facebook. And I'll say, okay, there's nothing to see.
Yeah.
And they'll go look at the thumb. Or
Yeah.
or you take them to the Apple near the spaceship. A, you can't even get in, and B, you can't even see it. And C, there's that little sort of lame visitor center where you can't see anything. So the point is that historically, great cities with great companies would invite people into the companies, give them tours, etc.
Mm.
You go to Ireland and go to Guinness, you get to go drink Guinness and see where the beer is produced. So I think it's kind of an anomaly that our companies don't welcome people in, even though there would be this great opportunity, which is many tourists who come to the Bay Area every year
Yeah.
who would love to go on a tour of Apple or Facebook or Google, take your pick. So that just speaks to this issue about no public buildings that are particularly spectacular and welcoming of people. So we're hoping to change that. Our project is a marathon. If we're successful, it'll be 5 or 10 more years, and somebody your age will replace me and hopefully take it to the finish line. We need to find big donors who believe in the vision, and we've raised a few $1 million, but ultimately this thing will cost probably tens of millions of dollars, and for big projects, that's not a lot of money.
Do you think, or like, what are thoughts of like approaching like the tech companies that like are close, and like having them contribute? Because it's to that point. It's interesting that you made that because it's so true. It's like, yeah, I've driven up to you've seen the thumb for Facebook, but other than that, it's like you can't go in there. I mean, I have been because I've had a friend kind of give me a tour, but she worked there, right? But to anybody in the public, you can't go. I think it'd be kind of nice for them to maybe like come back and help out their Apple and Google and all, I think to contribute.
Of our 550 or so donors, only a few of them are tech companies. They don't have a deep history of philanthropy like the wealthy leaders did 150, let's say to 150 years ago. The Rockefellers, the Fords, the Carnegies.
Mm-hmm.
They typically lived in their community. One of the issues we have in Silicon Valley is that the companies see themselves as global, and even the leaders, the executives who control the purse strings, largely want to contribute to wherever they grew up. So we've gotten some very generous donations from Adobe and Applied Materials, Cupertino Electric, and maybe a few others. But for the most part, our donors are individuals and families, and the kind of what I call the usual suspects. It's kind of the Rotary people,
Mm-hmm.
the ones who simply care about our community, want to do the good work, and are incredibly generous. And so luckily we've got over 500 of those generous people who supported us. And if we're successful, they'll be supporting, as I said, our project after I'm long gone to really design the park and then build something spectacular.
So what is that threshold that you need to hit in order to like do that next step?
Probably it's going to involve the city council empowering a conservancy to run Plaza de Cesar Chavez. Currently, the city parks department runs the park, and the city parks departments don't have a lot of staff. Their budgets have been cut, so they don't have money, they don't have staff. Conservancies actually run most of the really successful parks in America. And the reason conservancies are important is they're nonprofit organizations that donors want to donate to. If I asked you to donate to the city of San Jose, pretty unlikely you would. Maybe especially if you were a citizen of a city, you'd say, I pay my taxes for the park. So we hope that a group is empowered and that group has a wonderful board of directors who can go out and convince wealthy donors to support the idea, especially once it's actually been drawn and developed. It's not fully developed yet, but it will be later this year.
That's exciting. Will we be able to see like drawings
Yeah.
of it at Rotary and everything?
Mhm.
Maybe we'll have to have you come back
We-
on and then we can showcase that. That'd be kind
We've
of cool.
spoken at Rotary before, and we will again at the appropriate time.
Yeah. Yeah.
We'll ask them to invite us. And
I think that would be so cool to see that. And just, yeah, no, it's to that point. I for Northern California, it's what do we have? It's like the Golden Gate Bridge and there's nothing else. This,
Well-
it's, real. I mean, there are other things, but like that to your point and what you've been working on, I just think that's really cool that you're doing that and really trying to show like, hey, we're here too.
This is 500 generous community members who care about the community or trying to do something good. And originally we thought it could be done relatively quickly, and we learned that it's very complicated. People oppose me or us or ideas that we have, think we're stupid or think we're ill-informed. So we keep putting one foot in front of the other and keep working hard on it. And hopefully in the next years, it'll gain traction and be successful. That's our dream.
Yeah, no, I'm any way that I can help and support, and
You're on the
we'll
list.
try to blast this out to everybody. And is there a who could we put in the contact for like to reach out, and if there's maybe people watching this right now that want to help donate, is it okay if we put like contact
I'll share
information?
the details with you after the meeting.
Okay.
So you can put it in.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, let's do that, and then yeah, local San Jose, Silicon Valley people, let's like make this happen. I'm totally about this and getting something like here so people can come and visit and go see.
Thank you.
I like the arch in St. Louis. I remember going to that as a kid and just like looking up at that thing and being like, whoa, it's like I'm here, and then you get like the little figurine and you put it on your desk and it's like, Statue of Liberty. It's like, what is that for Silicon Valley? I think that's great.
That's what we're working on.
I think that's great. Well, Steve, thank you so much for coming on. I appreciate it. This has been a lot of fun. Thank you.
Thoroughly enjoyed it, and good luck with all your endeavors.
Yeah. Likewise, and I will see you at Rotary, and I can't wait to see the final drawings of it all.
One more quick comment about Rotary.
Sure.
Which ended up being a major theme of all this. Actually, two more comments.
Yeah, absolutely.
One is that interestingly, in the last 33 years, as I said, that I've been in Rotary, all of my best friends now are my Rotary friends. And
That's great.
something that happens if you work hard with friends doing good things, it's kind of like going to war together, and you end up with these deep, deep bonds. And so you'll find Rotary is only as good as you make it.
Hmm.
So if you get involved, you'll make all these lifelong friends, and that's really the great thing about it. Most of us join Rotary thinking, oh, I can make business contacts and kind of network myself. After a short period, you'll realize that's good, and that
Yeah.
will happen. What it's really about is life experience and friends. And then one more thing, since you're a Jesuit trained
Yeah.
kid,
Yeah.
we do a thing in Rotary called personals, and you will be invited to do it at some point. So
Okay.
maybe a couple times a year, two members go up and they give 15-minute personals, sort of like you were trying to get me to do today, but they're completely unstructured. So you get 15 minutes and you talk about whatever you want. You just talk about your life. And it's really interesting having that assignment if there's no structure, because you can talk about anything. It's easy if someone asks you direct questions.
Yeah.
So when I was writing mine and developing it and thinking about my influences, I talked about much of what I talked about today, my dad, my kids and such, but the Jesuits really came up as a powerful force in my life. My three boys went to Bellarmine. I went to public school, so I didn't go to,
I had friends that go to Bellarmine.
yeah,
too.
I didn't go to
Great
Jesuit
school.
high school, but I did go to Santa Clara for a while. And my dad went to Santa Clara, and my brother and my sister and my oldest son, blah, blah, blah. So we're a Santa Clara family. But it was interesting in self-analyzing the profound effect that the Jesuits have on you. And because I'm sure when you were there, there's still a few Jesuits, I'm guessing, at Loyola.
Yeah.
And the Jesuit way of thinking is very powerful. So I just thought I'd throw that out.
Yeah, no, it's Loyola was a great school. I wouldn't trade it for the world. Took a lot of theology courses, and I was really into that. And the fact, what I loved about it too, is it's like there were people from all these different backgrounds that weren't even Jesuits or Catholics, and they would be in these classes with us, and we'd all be talking. And Loyola, I wouldn't change it for the world. It was nice because the classes were small, so I could literally 10 or 15 people and our professor, and like that's what I loved about it versus being in a giant like auditorium. I don't know how it was like at Santa Clara.
Small.
Yeah, Yeah, I think and then you get to like make that connection with your professor, and then you're friends with them. I still talk with a bunch of them, even after like all this time.
A lot of professors at Loyola and Santa Clara have been back and forth over the years.
Yeah,
They're almost like sister institutions along with USF.
yeah, yeah. It's it's a
Or maybe we would say brother institutions instead of sister.
yeah. No, it's great. Yeah, I did a little bit of. I did a little bit of a basketball at Santa Clara. It was like a little when I was really young. I did a couple camps there. It was fun. It's a gorgeous school too. I was very close to going there, but I wanted to go down to LA and do that whole thing.
Good for you.
Yeah. Well, Steve, thank you.
Thank you, Mike.
I appreciate it. Thank you all for watching. Make sure you like, share, comment, and subscribe. It really does help us out here at the Red Room Podcast. And make sure to click this link below. Let's help Steve here, and let's try to get something here in San Jose, Silicon Valley. It is time that this happens, and any help would be appreciated.
Thank you, Mike.
Yeah, cool. All right. Have a great rest of your day. Thank you so much.